Well, I feel like I was a bit of a cliche. I feel like every English teacher has a book that they're writing on the sidelines. And I was no different. And I kind of told myself like it didn't matter how long it took me to get a book published, that, as long as I was on the path to a dream, I was kind of living the dream. So being a seventh grade English teacher was the best possible training because I was around basically who I would be writing for, and reading all middle grade books because I was book talking those books to them every day, and just kind of seeing what grabbed them and what didn't. And one of my big passions was reluctant readers, because I'd have these boys who'd come into my classroom and they'd go, Mrs. Martin, we don't really like reading. And I was like, no, you just haven't found the right book yet. So it was kind of a passion of mine to find that right book. And then eventually became my passion to kind of write that right book that would grab a middle school age boy and then not let him go, because middle school in general, they're kind of tough clients. They'll pick up a book and put it down just based off the cover, based off the first paragraph. So you have to have action from page one and then pull them in throughout the whole story and never really drop that action. And there's a lot of books out there like that engage boys, but a lot of them are geared more towards an older age boy. They're more young adult books, which are the 12 to 18-year-old bracket, where I write 8 to 12-year-old. So I wanted mine to have all the action and adventure of a young adult book, but without the grit of a young adult book, so that it was more accessible to those 8 to 12-year-old boys who needed something like that. I did a lot of things in my classroom to engage reluctant readers. Like I said, that was kind of my passion. I feel like every teacher has like a side something that's their like thing. You teach the curriculum and then you're also passionate about something. Mine was those reluctant readers. I used to do a project in my classroom called the 50 Book Challenge, and I pulled it from a book called The Book Whisperer. Donalyn Miller wrote the book, The Book Whisperer, and she's a genius. And she talks about getting these kids to read these 40 books or 50 books. And so I would set out at the beginning of the year and tell them, you're going to read 40 books in my classroom. And by the end of the year, I told them, your grade isn't based off of whether you read those 40 books, but you created the habit of always having a book in your hand. Because I taught in Carmel, Indiana, and they're very high-level kids. And I knew if I said, you're going to read 10 books, some kids would have those 10 books read in the first month and then say, well, but I don't have to read the rest of the year. So I had to set a number high enough that they kept a book in their hands. Another thing that I did is I actively read so much middle grade and so much young adult content because I was trying to find the best books out there. So I was always coming from a really authentic place when I did a book talk. I would sit down and say, okay, guys, here's the 10 books I read, and these are the really good ones. And I would book talk these books before we'd go to the library. And then I'd have my students have a notebook, and in the back they had what I called a someday list of books they wanted to read someday. And so they would keep track as I did a book talk of any book that sounded good. They'd write it on their list. So they had a list at all times of books that sounded absolutely fabulous. Because a lot of kids think that all books are created equal. And I said, no, guys, there's books out there that are crummy and not worth your time, So you got to kind of find the books that work for you. So they always had this working list to kind of go off of.